Hey everybody, welcome back. Another WV Guns and Goats video for you tonight. We are taking a look at this optic right here by Riton Optics. This is their Tactix-5 1:10 by 24 LVPO. This is a first focal plane scope. Hey everybody, while I was putting this video together, I realized that sometimes I said LVPO instead of LPVO for low power variable optic. Just a couple letter mix up there. I didn't want to do a reshoot, so I just thought I'd toss this editor's note in. 30mm tube, and it's got about 3.5 inches of eye relief, so pretty generous eye relief on here. This is a first focal plane scope, and the adjustments on this are in mils. We've got it mounted to the little 300 blackout Bergara B14, our anechoic silencer on the side. I figured this was gonna be a short range rig, so a short range optic, 1:10 power, should be a pretty good scope for this gun. Now, I didn't know much about Riton optics until my local gun shop started carrying them, and I was able to check out some of their scopes, but they didn't have any of these LVPOs in store. So I reached out to Riton and said, hey, I saw your scopes at my local gun shop, and they asked if I'd like to try out some of their scopes for a video review. So they sent over this scope, and they've also sent over another scope that you'll see in another video. So that's my relationship with Riton. They sent some products for us to do a review on. But before we get into everything in this video, which is going over everything that comes in the box, all of the scope's features, we're gonna sight it in and see how easy it is to sight in, and we're gonna shoot it at about 50 and 100 yards and see how it does. And I'll give you some reticle footage as well, so you can see the reticle in here when we go through the magnification ranges. But before we do all that, I'd like you to headbutt that subscribe button to join the herd here at WV Guns and Goats. Now that we've got the rifle out of the way, let's take a quick look at the box. 5 Tactics 1:10 by 24. On the end here, we have a scope info card. It just says it's the 5 Tactics 1:10 by 24, but it also shows us it's a first focal plane, MRAD, and illuminated reticle, and it is called the 30T reticle and has a photo of the reticle right here on that sticker. The box opens up like this, and inside there are 2 foam blocks that hold the scope during transport. There's also a few other things in this box. Let's go ahead and get them out right here. You're going to get a microfiber cleaning cloth, and you're going to get 2 Allen keys, and then you're going to get a sticker for your gun safe or your toolbox. Now you'll notice I haven't pulled a manual out of this box. This card right here that thanks you for purchasing the scope, and it has their website on there, which is www.ritonoptics.com. It has a link on the back here where you can go to so you can download the manual, so you don't have a paper manual just floating around taking up space. But that is everything that you're going to get in the box with the 5 Tactics 1:10 by 24. Now we know this is a 1:10x optic with a 24mm objective and a 30mm tube. It's also made out of 6061 T6 aluminum, and it includes these flip-up scope caps from the factory. However, to me, they do feel a little bit flimsy, so keep in mind you may want to upgrade those in the future. It also comes with this cattail or tactical lever right here to help you get a grasp on the magnification ring and make movements to it fairly quickly. But if we look here, we do have this in their Riton scope mount here. Look at this. It's at 10x power right there. It's at 10x, and you have a little bit of a gap right here between the top of that throw lever and the rail. You're going to want to keep that in mind. If you're using their scope mount like I am, it looks like they have enough room built in. But there's also a spot right here that you can switch this lever to if you want to put it in this position, if it comes into contact with your firearm, or you can take them off completely and then you just have a normal magnification ring right there. And this is a first focal plane reticle. So when you change this magnification, the reticle is going to get larger or smaller. And the unique thing about the reticle in this optic is when it's on low power, it acts like a red dot. When you get into the larger magnification range, the 9 and 10 power, it's a Christmas tree style reticle with your windage and elevation holdovers built in to the reticle. Now let's talk about the eye relief here. It has a very generous 3.5 inches of eye relief. And we can't talk about eye relief without mentioning field of view. At 1x, it has a 105.8, so 105.8 feet of field of view. And when you go up to the 10 power, it comes down to 10.5 feet of field of view. Now, the adjustments in here are MRAD adjustments. They also have the scope available in MOA if you're used to them. I haven't used the mil radian adjustments before, the MRAD adjustments, so this is my first MRAD scope, and each click value is 1/10 of an MRAD at 100 yards. Now I believe one MRAD is 3.6 inches at 100 yard, and this scope has 40 MRADs of total adjustment. Now I think that's both vertical and horizontal. So windage and elevation, I believe both have 40 MRADs of adjustment. This scope is about 11.81 inches in length, and it is a little heavy at 1.8 pounds. The illumination on this reticle uses a CR2032 battery, and it has an off position in between each illumination brightness position. So you don't have to scroll through a lot of different brightness positions to get back to your favorite one. You just give it a click up or down and it turns off, and then you can just give it that click backwards up or down to go back to the illumination that you prefer. Now we do need to talk about the clicks on the scope. In my experience, they feel a little spongy, a little mushy, and they're not audible at all. However, because they are low profile turrets, they're not designed to be adjusted on the fly very often. They're more of kind of like a set it and forget it kind of turret that you're going to find on a normal hunting scope, and they are capped for that reason. They're not those always exposed tactical kind of turrets. So I feel the sponginess, the mushiness, and the non-audibleness of these turrets, well, I can kind of let that slip on this scope. So next up, we're going to look through this optic and see how that reticle looks on different magnification settings. We are at 10x magnification. We are going to zoom out to 1x here, and then we are going to zoom back to 10x, go through the full magnification range. You can see as I zoom out, the first focal plane reticle changing with the magnification and turning into a red dot reticle here at 1x with a post at 3, 6, and 9 that help guide your eye to the center of the scope. Now let's go ahead and zoom back in up to 10x. The reticle is going to get larger. The windage and elevation markings are starting to become more visible. That whole, what they call the Christmas tree underneath the center reticle is now visible. We're here at about 50 yards and we're going to get this scope sighted in. We're using some PNW arms, 300 blackout range ammo. This is supersonic 147 grain 300 blackout. We're going to see how easy this is to sight in here at 50 yards, and then we're going to move it out and try to get close to 100 yards. Now I'm going to go ahead and sight this in. All right, so I got it sighted in. I'm gonna put the sight in target on the screen now so you can check it out. And this range ammo isn't the most consistent stuff, but I was able to get okay-ish accuracy out of it. This is probably made with 147 grain surplus projectiles. All right, we've got the target down there at about 90 yards. It is this target right here, 8-inch bullseye, stuck to a larger target down there. Now, when I look through the scope on 1X, the red dot portion of this scope pretty much takes up that entire target there, this entire 8-inch bullseye. However, when I zoom in to about 8 power, the 4 sections that make up the red dot portion, there's the 4 sections with a dot in the center, they're kind of these 4 diagonal lines, and they look like this on the target. So they are taking up the corners there, and then we have a illuminated dot in the center of that we can use to shoot the target. So let's go ahead and take a few shots at 100 yards here. I tell you, with the target being down there in the dark, it's really nice to have that illuminated reticle. Especially on a black target, we can easily see the illuminated dot. Didn't think I had one more left in there. Gonna go ahead and put 5 more rounds on target downrange. Okay, everybody, well, we looked at the Riton Optics 1 to 10 by 24. And you know that old saying, a jack of all trades, master of none? This is a great example with this scope here. Unfortunately, 1 to 10 seems like a great idea, giving you 2 more magnification levels over a 1 to 8, 4 more over a 1 to 6. However, that starts to really go against the usability of this scope here. Now, what am I talking about? Well, after I got done shooting this the other day, I went online to see what was causing the issues I was having and why the eye box on this scope is so unforgiving. A lot of 1 to 10s are going to a 34 or 35 millimeter tube. This has a 30 millimeter tube. That smaller tube, in comparison to a 34 or 35 millimeter, combined with such a high magnification levels, makes the eye box back here extremely sensitive to your head position. In fact, if you were doing anything more than shooting this off a bench, trying to hunt with it or shoot competition with it, I think you'll find yourself fighting this optic on anything over 8x magnification. I think this would have been a great 1 to 8 power scope. But a 1 to 10, well, 9 and 10 just run into such a sensitive eye box, you're going to have issues there. If I move my head just a little bit, I started to get shadow coming in from up, down, left, right in the scope and obscuring my sight picture. And in fact, on 10x, I even found the sight picture to be a little hazy, so I always use this at a maximum of 8x. Now, what did I like about this scope? Well, my likes don't really make up for that dislike on the scope there. I did like the amount of eye relief this scope has at 3.5 inches is very generous. Although if we look here where it's mounted on the rail on this optic and how the scope is almost all the way forwards in the scope mount, it's almost too much eye relief. So I wish this scope had as generous an eye box as it does eye relief. I also liked how clear the glass was in this optic. I had no problem seeing my target down in a shaded area, and when I looked at a vertical fence post at the edge of the image in the scope, that fence post was still straight. It didn't have any curvature to it. So there's no, I think that'd be like a fisheye effect. There's none of that. The image quality is very good with this optic. I also liked this tactical throw lever here. It makes it very easy to adjust the magnification on the scope, and it bolts to the magnification ring. It's not just clamped around it where it could get lost. Now let's talk about these turrets. They're nice and large, easy to grasp. However, they're a little bit mushy and they're not audible. And being a little bit mushy, they're not very crisp or tactile. However, this scope has capped turrets. You're not going to be adjusting that turret all the time. You're kind of going to sight this in and just leave it sighted in at the distance you want. So I don't hold it against this scope as much as I would on a precision scope where you're going to be turning those turrets all the time in something like a long-range competition. The illumination on this scope was nice and bright during the daytime, and I like the fact that it has an off position in between each illumination level, so you don't have to go through a lot of different levels to get back to the brightest setting. If that's what you want to leave it on, you can just give it a click up or down, and you don't have to go far to go back into that setting. Now the mount, pretty nice mount, high enough for the scope to clear with the throw lever back here. It easily clears the rail here, and it hasn't come loose. It's held the scope securely. So what about the price of this optic? Well, this has an MSRP of around $1,000, and I would not pay that price for this scope. I have seen street prices on this optic for under $600. However, there are a lot of options in that price range by other manufacturers as well. And as I said earlier, I think this scope would be a good 1 to 8x optic because that's where I found myself using it most of the time. Maximum level of magnification 8x. If you want to check this out, you can go to www.ritonoptics.com. And this has been another WV Guns and Goats video, everybody. Thanks for watching. Remember, if you're not out there having fun shooting, what are you doing?